what I really wanted was to kind of distill the experience of being a 14-year-old girl reading something like this for the first time. It's a difficult book to adapt, and I suppose the main thing I wanted to do was also keep as much of Bronte's dialogue, because it's so good. So even if I've taken some liberties with the text, which obviously I have, there is a lot of her original words in there.
Hello, and welcome back to The Director's Cut, brought to you by the Directors Guild of America. In this episode, tragedy strikes star-crossed lovers in 18th century England in director Emerald Fennell's period romance, Wuthering Heights. Based on the novel by Emily Brontë, the film follows the impoverished Heathcliffe and the wealthy Catherine, two young lovers hailing from different social classes. After Catherine marries someone else and Heathcliff disappears in despair, years pass, and he returns with mysterious wealth and nefarious intentions. In addition to Wuthering Heights, Fennell's other directorial credits include the feature film Saltburn. She was nominated for the DGA Award for Outstanding Directorial Achievement in Feature Film for her 2020 feature, Promising Young Woman. Following a screening of the film at the DGA Theater in Los Angeles, Fennell spoke with director J.J. Abrams about filming Wuthering Heights. Listen on for their spoiler-filled conversation.
Thank you. Happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you for coming. Emerald Fennell, ladies and gentlemen, director of Wuthering Heights.
J.J. Abrams, though, to be fair.
I have 9 million questions. Your movie is hot. Let's be honest, it's hot. Can I just ask you about the tone of the movie? Like what you were, when you first went into adapting this, as you did, was there a clear tone in your mind? Because when I watched the film, it was such a tightrope of tone. And I'm just curious how you arrived at it, and was what you did, I already have a follow-up question, was what you did what you expected to do at the beginning?
Well, thank you so much. I think that tone is one of those funny things that one like thinks about after the fact a lot. Do you know, it's like themes. There are those things that actually, I always feel that it's a kind of maybe an innate preference for me, because I like horror and I like comedy and I like things that are sexy, but I think the thing that I like most of all is something that sort of taps into something physical and primal and emotional. So really, when it comes to tone, I find that I guess my job as a writer or a director, or I guess even a producer, is just the application of pressure and then when to release it. And so I guess that can be, in a film like this, it could be the sort of sexual tension that's alleviated by a kiss, or it could be, something unbearably embarrassing that's then relieved by a laugh. It's sort of that thing. And I always feel like I like the tone to always be a little bit surprising, a little bit perverse somehow.
Talk about the giant strawberry. There was the biggest strawberry I've ever seen was in this film.
Thank you so much for talking about
welcome.
the giant strawberry. Because when I was talking about this movie with the Warner Brothers, and I was trying to explain it, and I was sort of saying I wanted Thrushcross Grange to feel like this kind of another world of wealth and opulence and kind of, but something that sticks in your throat. It's sort of too much. And I found out about these strawberries that they grow in Japan, which are the size of apples. And so, but it felt like the perfect thing, this idea of like hothouse flowers, things that are too big, things that are sort of so, that they have this sort of grotesque feeling. So we did try, the Incredible Art Department did try to grow the strawberries. They were only big strawberries. And so then we had an amazing food artist build them out of marzipan and chocolate. And that was last Valentine's Day we shot that. And so then everyone took giant strawberries home to their
That's fantastic.
lovers.
I was just struck by them. Could you just talk about the writing process? Like when you first read the book, what it meant to you, but then what the process was like and how you distilled that book and the parts of it into what you ended up with.
I think what I really wanted to do, given that this is such a meaningful book to me and to so many people, and given that it's such a kind of wild and complicated book, and it's been adapted so beautifully so many times already, what I really wanted was to kind of distill the experience of being a 14-year-old girl reading something like this for the first time. And so part of the process was I hadn't read the book. I've always loved this book, and it's been one of the imaginary worlds that I live in ever since I read it. And when I started to seriously consider adapting it, I hadn't read it for a couple of years, and the first thing I did was wrote down everything I remembered from it. And so some of those things were from the book, and some of them were nearly but not quite, and then some of them were just like outright wish fulfillment that I'd sort of internalized. And so then with adapting it, it was kind of about which of those things to keep and what to disregard. And, you know, it's a difficult book to adapt. And I suppose the main thing I wanted to do was also keep as much of Bronte's dialogue, because it's so good. So even if I've taken some liberties with the text, which obviously I have, there is a lot of her original words in there. I mean, I don't know, I haven't done the statistics, but statistically loads.
When did you decide to put the quotation marks on the title?
I kind of feel like they were there even on the first script, because I just don't think you can ever really say that you're adapting something like that. And you're doing a version of it. It always felt to me like this was going to be an emotional response to something rather than the thing itself. And also they used to do it all the time. You know, all my favorite movies, all the adaptations of like Rebecca, they always had quotation marks, Gone with the Wind, if it was taken from a novel. And so it felt kind of respectful to me as a sort of Brontë fanatic to kind of add that level of sort of distance, maybe.
The production design was so beautiful, and there are a million things I want to get to, so this is no particular order, but could you just talk about your sense of design of the film? Did you have a vision of it going in, or did you work with a team to sort of find it as it went along? And if you could talk about heads of department, production designer, set design, that kind of thing.
I think a lot of it's in there because of the way that I write, which is these sort of imaginary worlds that I live in. So a lot of it, you know, the skin room, things like that were in the script.
Was that her skin? Did you like take photographs and then have them paint it?
She sent us photographs of her skin and the inside of her wrists, her veins, her freckles. Yeah.
Could you send me those pictures? Is that possible?
You're not the first person who asked. She's really wonderful like that, Margot. You asked her. There's also the hair work animation at the beginning of this movie, which took almost as long to make as the movie itself. It actually has Margot and Jacob's real hair in it. And I asked Margot when we were doing ADR if she'd give me some of her hair, and she just went, "Oh yeah." And she just pulled out a handful of her hair and just handed it to me. So I just walked through Soho like clutching Margot Robbie's hair, which is kind of showbiz, right? It's just what you expect is going to happen.
Wow.
But I think just working with the things I've worked with Susie, the incredible production designer on Saltburn, so we know each other. And I think Jacqueline, the costume designer, I hadn't worked with before, but Linus I had too. And so we all like to start from an emotional place. And so with this, it was kind of, I wanted to create a world or two worlds that would make us feel something rather than being kind of literal. Because that's sort of the thing of the Gothic, isn't it? Is that it's an emotional experience, not just a sort of real one. And so we sort of felt that at Wuthering Heights, the idea was that nature is kind of interrupting it. So you've got these rocks coming in and it becomes sort of malignant, and these sort of tumors grow out of it as the longer it kind of goes on, sort of being overtaken by nature. And then at Thrushcross, it's always this attempt to like contain nature. So everything is like taxidermy, or it's things trapped behind panels or behind glass. And that as a kind of guiding kind of light for us really, really helped.
The plaster hands, could you talk about that?
Yes.
So cool.
Oh my God, they're so cool. So the Victorians had this kind of obsession with disembodied hands in the same way that it's a sort of extension of the same thing, which is like you take something natural and you take away the thing that's useful. You take away a hand, but you take away its ability to touch, I guess. So we knew that we wanted this room of Edgar's to be a collector's room. So it's a library, but it's a room that's full of taxidermy or kind of shells, sort of nature that's just been put behind glass. And so Kathy becomes an extension of that place. She's sort of a collector's item. And so when we first see her in that room, her clothes match exactly the floor and the walls. And so it's always that kind of thing of, just trying always to express, I don't know, the kind of emotional terrain, the kind of weirdness, that kind of feeling of being disembodied and sort of cut off from yourself.
When you were talking about the book and trying to preserve Bronte's dialogue, were there other things in the book that you felt sort of beholden to, or that you wanted to preserve, that were specific, that you ended up doing in a way that you feel particularly excited about or happy about?
I think there was so much I wanted to preserve, and really it was kind of the feeling of it, and the feeling of the book for me, and it is very personal, is sort of illicit pleasure and pain. And there's something so sadomasochistic actually about the book. So that was something. And I think one of the scenes that I think I'm proud of is the moment that Nellie goes to Wuthering Heights and finds Isabella and Heathcliff. And a lot of that dialogue is Bronte. It's just we've slightly changed the nature of the kind of what Nellie finds there. But that scene in the book is one of the most transgressive things ever written in literature. It's so dark. It's so shocking. It's always struck me as something that feels impossible to have published nearly 180 years ago. And so it's kind of interesting always when the things in the film that feel like they would just be a sort of my perverse imagination really are not. They're all Bronte.
This film obviously was sort of budgetarily a step up, and I'm just curious what that means for you, what the experience is to suddenly be working on something at a certain scale, and how that compares to your prior experiences, and what it meant, both in the good and the bad.
Well, I think it's terrifying because, obviously the stakes and the responsibility just suddenly are much, much higher. And also I think, it's still very rare, regrettably, that women are, have access to these kinds of budgets still, and especially for a movie that is, in many ways a romance. So I felt a lot of responsibility in that way. But also, I love building stuff. And if you're going to build a world that is, that does play with the suspension of disbelief, and it is surreal in ways, to be able to physically make it, to know that it exists, was really important. And so to be able to work with really the best in the world at everything that they do, to be the best model makers, the best stop motion animators, we had the costume department was like dozens and dozens of people who were leather workers and cutters, just being able to do that. And the craft in Britain is so incredible. And so to be able to do that was wonderful. And, I hope that it's sort of all, it's lovely to see it. Every time I watch the movie, I feel everyone's work.
The set painters, I have to say, aren't they remarkable? I not to say that there aren't great set painters everywhere, and there are, but I will say that the set painters in London are utterly extraordinary and can make, plywood look like stone or marble, and it's just a remarkable thing. And I just watching the movie, and I think anyone here who knows how movies are made, you're always sort of like trying to deconstruct it and figure out how they did what. But I just found myself, with the textures in your film, I found myself just believing it in a way that was really lovely, and I just think that they did an extraordinary job.
They really did. And but we were looking to the movies made here. Part of the conversation was about the sort of great soundstage movies of the like Hollywood golden era and how they made us feel, and how they're kind of the epic design was part of the feeling. And it was, there was something so magical about those films. And so we were always looking to those people and the worlds that they built, and even, Powell and Pressburger and the kind of incredible matte paintings they did and things. But no, they built both of these sets in 3 months. It was, deranged, so fantastic, just amazing. And it was great because whenever I went into the builds, they all just thought I was an intern. So I would be like, I'm going to look at it. And they're like, get out of the way. What are you doing, love? And I was like, sorry, so sorry, excuse me.
And can you talk about how long you shot on the moors and then how long you shot on the stages?
Well, we had to do it back to front, which obviously was a nightmare weather-wise, because we started, because of, the dates and everything, we started in the studio, and we filmed in the studio. I think we did 8 weeks in the studios, or 9, and then a week and a half in Yorkshire. So it was a short shoot. All of the budget went on the builds. It didn't go on the schedule. But luckily, everyone's so good, and they all remembered their lines, which really is lovely.
That's lucky. Can you just name a sequence? It's sort of fun to sometimes hear the process of how things evolve or change in a way you might not expect. If you could just choose a sequence that you particularly like that may have changed a bit from novel to script to set to cut. Like, was there anything in particular that felt like a thing that you maybe lost or that was not what you expected going in?
God, that's such a good question. Of course, now I'm like, did I even make a film? Can I remember the film? I tell you, one of the hardest scenes, and one of the ones that I think that I really love now, is the introduction of Isabella and Edgar. The first time we see Thrushcross, because we knew that was always a kind of live or die moment, because it's the part of the movie where it's kind of Dorothy going to Oz and seeing in Technicolor. And we're introducing a place that feels sort of surreal, and we're introducing these two characters that the audience, kind of should dislike, in the sense that they're antagonists. They're going to be disruptive to Kathy and Heathcliffe's relationship. And so, it was all that stuff about how to kind of make them lovable almost immediately, and how to make this world credible. And that was just, it was a lot of working with brilliant Shazad and Alison, and kind of working on that moment between them. And then I think it was originally, it was a sort of picnic, it was kind of really ostentatious, kind of crazy picnic. And well, if you can believe it, this is the slightly less over the top version of what we had. But, I think it's one of those moments that I always feel like the movie actually kind of you get into the full mayhem, and it's sort of quite thrilling and gratifying. But it was really hard tonally. When you talk about that, like tonal balance, that was a very long, complicated process in post as well, with the music and everything.
I don't even know what the question is I'm about to ask, but I feel there's a question here, which is when you are shooting something that is overtly, clearly sexy, sensual, and it's something that, I don't know what, had Margot worked with Jacob prior to this?
No, they haven't worked with each other before, no.
And I'm just curious, like going into this, what the conversation is, and on set on these days when it needs to be smoldering, like what you're doing, because I know it's work, and that you're losing the light, you have to make the day, you have a million practical things, But I'm just curious what that was, and I know it's not new to you, but this kind of element in the movie. But were there any specific challenges in this particular film in that regard?
Well, I think the great thing, because I've worked with Jacob before and I've worked with Margot before as a producer, so I think partly a huge amount of it is trust in your director. And because a lot of this stuff is not just on the day or in rehearsals or in the writing, but it's what what a director chooses to do in post and how things are shown in the edit. And so a huge thing for me is about that trust and knowing that everyone that everyone feels safe the whole way through the process. And that means that those scenes are kind of less awkward, if they could be. But honestly, the great thing about Margot and Jacob is they're just such brilliant actors. And I think they feel the same way that I do about sex scenes, which is that they are just scenes. Sex scenes aren't really interesting if they're anatomical. Oh my God, I'm so jet-lagged. Anatomical. Yeah, that's the word. Thank you. They're not interesting. Like the biology of sex isn't that interesting. It's the power play. It's a sex scene that's a breakup scene, or it's a sex scene that's a kind of where nothing happens, where they're actually just watching two other people and we never see what happens downstairs. It's about the space between them. And really, those are all the conversations we have. It's how do we make this the most interesting version of a scene? And then it's sort of not, and then it's just much more freeing and much more interesting for everyone too, because it means you can, if things come out of rehearsal that are darker or more tender than you're expecting, and you can always use those.
Being a terrific actor yourself, what is your experience on the set with directors, and how do you take that into doing what you do as a director? And then I have a follow-up question about what you do with actors on the set.
So, I think the best thing for me in the world was I worked on a TV show for 5 years in Britain called Call the Midwife. And that is just an incredible show. And it was also, an incredible experience, because what it did was we had, like any long-running TV show, you have the same crew, but you have a different DP and a director every 2 episodes. And that's the best learning experience if you want to be a director, because you see what works, you see what doesn't work, you see what puts people's backs up, you see what loses time. And what it really taught me more than anything, and it's not just about working with actors, but it's that making something, whether it's a movie or a TV series, is completely collaborative, and you can do anything if everyone is working together. And it sounds very cheesy, and it is cheesy, but it's also mercenary because it saves money too, which people like. Is what I knew from Call the Midwife, because we all loved each other and respected each other, that if the cast and the crew help each other, you can shoot 10 pages of medical dialogue in one shot, because everyone helps blocking and they help beat, that was the most useful thing in the world to me.
When you're on the set, are you bringing the actors, giving sort of within scenes, giving context, backstory? Like, what are you talking about with the actors and I understand that, you had a wonderful cast here, and it's not like they need to be babysat or puppeteered, but what is it that you talk to them about on the set? Like, what is your conversation in setting up a scene, in talking about, where they've come, where they're going? I'm just curious, like, how much you are giving them and how much you let them lead you.
Well, it kind of, it does depend on the actor, because people's processes are so different. But what's lovely about this is everyone has sort of a similar process. I like to do a lot of rehearsals, and I do a lot of the conversation there, a lot of the trying stuff, and I think it's nice to kind of approach it more like a play at that stage, and then I'll do a sort of rewrite based on things that have sort of interested me that have come out of rehearsals. But then on the day, I actually what I love is to set it all up perfectly and then be a bit disruptive and allow people to be disruptive themselves. So generally speaking, it's like boring stuff first. So do the audition take first, because these are the best actors in the world and they know what they're doing, and the first take's going to be dynamite. And then it's like, well, let's see. Let's see if we can do something that's going to surprise me. Let's see if you can do something that surprises each other. Let's like upend some of the power dynamics here, or, you know, spend this whole scene trying not to laugh. Or, you know, I think that's the thing that interests me, is that there's often something, there's a kind of certain amount of like playfulness, and also a certain amount of like provoking that you need to do, and not in a negative way, but more that they're able to sort of, people are able to provoke each other. And sometimes that's telling, you know, giving one person a note and not another. But I don't like trickery. I'm not one of those like trickery power mongers, I don't think. But I do like it to be alive, and I like it to be naughty and fun, like life is. You know, I like conversations that go in disruptive ways, I suppose.
Of the actors in this film, who did you hate to work with? No, I'm kidding. Who?
I know. I'm going to tell you. Do you want to know?
I was kidding, but let's hear it.
Felicity the snail.
Oh, really?
Very difficult.
What of the actors you work with on this film, who brought something that surprised you and changed the way you were approaching a character? Was there anyone who showed up with something that you were like, oh, let's go this way?
Well, I mean, everyone did that every day because they're so good. I think when Shazad came into audition, I'd already loved him because I'd seen him in things before, and I just thought he was so good. And I wanted Edgar to be a really credible rival and to have a very different, you know, energy. And he did something in the audition, which was when he proposed to Kathy, which we don't see in the movie, but which was in the audition version of the scene. We did shoot it.
I wondered that when I was watching the cut. When you cuts away, I was like, I wonder if they shot the...
Yeah, we did. But we didn't need it, you know.
That's true.
Well, I don't think, I hope not. Well, although if you were like, I wonder if they shot it, maybe I should have left it in.
It worked.
Damn. But what he did in the audition, which was so perfect, was he didn't go down on one knee, he went down on both knees. And it was just the most perfect kind of physical manifestation of giving yourself over to somebody that you've just completely fallen in love with, just like choosing a begging posture. It was so clever, and those are the moments that I like completely live for, when somebody comes in with something that makes you feel the thing you needed.
I thought the music was wonderful, and the Charli XCX tracks I thought were fantastic. I'm just curious if you could talk about that collaboration, please.
Yeah, that was just the best. It's just so cool. Well, I love her, and I've loved her for years. And her song "Boys" is the first song in "Promising a Woman," and it was the first song in the script, because I just think she's a really magical person, because not only is she really gifted, she's like prodigiously gifted musically, but the thing about Brat, for example, is I think that real, like, true genius artists have this ability to give us something that we didn't know we needed. And the thing about Brat, the album, and actually lots of her other albums, but particularly this one, is that what she intuited was everyone needed to just go crazy. And that's an artist who really is connected to the world, I think. And she's kind of a witch, Charli, and I mean that in the most positive way. I also hope that I am a witch. And so I sent her the script, and I didn't have any expectations. I knew that I wanted the music to have the same feeling as the film, which is that it's sort of, you know, sort of its own thing, or hopefully. I sent her the script, and she just wrote back to me. She read it immediately, well, in the middle of like the busiest period of her life. And she called me and said, "What do you want?" And I said, "I think, you know, a song." And she said, "How about an album?" And I was just like, well, obviously that's the best thing that anyone's ever said, please. And then she just started sending me this most transcendently beautiful music that was so connected to it. And then it was about, you know, we went back and forth a little bit, but not much. And then it was, you know, then folding it into the score with brilliant Anthony Willis, who's the amazing composer. And, you know, just, it's always everyone together kind of talking in a sort of layered way.
Well, I think she did an extraordinary job. I think you did an extraordinary job. And I just want to say thank you to Emerald Fennell and to all of you for coming. So, happy Valentine's Day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to another DGA Q&A. The Director's Cut is available wherever you listen to podcasts. And please share, subscribe, rate, and review. We'd love to hear your feedback, and you can help fellow film buffs find the show. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time. This podcast is produced by the Directors Guild of America.